Hey everybody, Ryan here at etrailer. Today on our 2017 Ford Focus, we're going to be showing you how to install the Roadmaster Diode Wiring Kit. Before we get into that though, let's just take a couple of minutes, check this out, and make sure it's going to work for you. Before we jump right in, I figured it'd be useful just to kind of touch base on the main parts that we're going to need to flat tow our Focus down the road in the first place. First one will be your base plate, and that's going to provide us with a solid attachment point. That way we're able to hook our tow bar up. Tow bar will be the second part, and this is going to be the physical link that actually connects the front of your Ford to the back of your motorhome. Third main piece will be the safety cables, and these are just there in the event of an unlikely disconnect. They're going to keep your vehicle and your coach connected together. The fourth main part will be tow bar wiring, and what this will do is send the lighting functions from the back of your motorhome to the back of your Ford, letting other motorists know what's going on and keeping you safe and legal. And last but not least, the fifth main part will be a supplemental braking system. And what this is going to do is apply the brakes in your Focus whenever you hit the brakes in your RV, helping to bring you to a more predictable and complete stop. There are a couple of more parts that aren't absolutely necessary, but I definitely recommend. One of them is a charge line, and what that's going to do is keep your Focus battery maintained and topped off whenever you're flat towing it behind your motorhome. That way, you're not going to get to your campsite or your destination with a dead battery. And something else is a automatic battery disconnect. So with the Focus, you actually have to disconnect your battery whenever you flat tow it, which isn't a huge deal, but can definitely get annoying. And so with the battery disconnect, it's something you set up once, and all you're going to have to do is push a button inside of the vehicle to disconnect the battery and to turn it back on. So it's just a big time saver, really. With that out of the way, here's a really good example on how our diodes are going to work. So we got the left turn signal going on our motorhome, and it's sending the signal back here to the left turn on our Focus. And the same will hold true for our right turn. We'll get our tail lights and our brake lights, so we'll have all of our bases covered. And honestly, when it comes to tow bar wiring, this kit is something I recommend, I'd say probably 95% of the time, pretty much for every vehicle, unless there's a special circumstance a vehicle can't use it. And I say that because once it's installed, it's going to look factory pretty much, and it's going to be super easy to hook up too. You just have one cable you got to plug in when you're ready to flat tow. We've done a ton of these, and they're really reliable. It's very rare we see one with an issue, and if one does come back, it's usually something simple, right? So I really can't ask for too much more. Another option would be magnetic lighting, which I'm not too crazy about, and that's because with those you have to set them up every time. They stick to the side or roof of your vehicle, and then you got to route a wire up to the back of your motorhome every single time you want to do that. And then when you're done, you take it all apart, and you got a big old box of parts to store, which definitely would rather avoid. So if you were to ask me would I use these on my own vehicle if I were to flat tow it, the answer would be yes, absolutely. So like I said, when you're ready to hook up, extremely straightforward. You plug one cable into the front, one into the back of the motorhome, and you're done. That's it as far as the wiring goes. That kind of brings you to my next point. There's several different variations of this kit available, and I just want to talk about what one would work best for you. That way you get the stuff you need, the right stuff you need the first time. And it's really just going to be dependent, a lot of it, on your tow bar. So for example, if you have a Nighthawk like this or a tow bar that comes with your wiring and your 6-way round connector plug, then the kit that you'll need for the Focus would be just kind of the bare bones kit, what I call it. You get your wiring bundle and your diodes and some small ins and outs. If your tow bar does not come with those parts, you can get kind of the whole kit, which will come with an umbilical cable here. And depending on the style of tow bar you have, that's going to kind of determine what cable you need. So for example, if you have a tow bar that has channels in it, right? So an opening for your wiring to run through, kind of like our Nighthawk here, you have two options. You have one that is a hybrid style cable, where it's kind of coiled on the end there, and then straight, that way you can run it through and plug it in. I'd recommend this if you have a lot of space between your vehicles, which you probably will. Since the Focus rides so low, you'll probably need a high-low adapter, which is this here. And so this is a lot longer, so this will work in those situations. If your tow bar has channels, again, there's also kits that have just a straight cable, so just be like that. Those would both work out fine. If your tow bar does not have channels in it, then this style of kit would work. So it's just completely coiled all the way through. When it's, running straight down the road, coils will keep it up off the ground, and then when you make those turns, it'll stretch out longer and give you that length that you need. So all those are 7-way round on the motorhome side, 6-way round on the vehicle side. For whatever reason, if you want to use a 4-way round on the vehicle side, 7 on the motorhome, there's this coiled one available. Don't really see too many of them. My thought is you might as well put the 6-way up there if you're going to go through the trouble. And then there's one more that you really don't see all that often. This has a 4-way flat to 4-way flat. So that's always an option for you too. If your motorhome is a little bit older and doesn't have a 7-way on the back, this could be one that would work for you. Other than that, at the end of the day, can't really ask for too much more. A really reliable kit and super easy to hook up. So not a whole lot to it there. As far as getting this installed goes, it's really not complicated per se. It's definitely time consuming, just having to route wires from the front all the way to the back and whatnot, but something you only have to do one time and you'll be in good shape. So if you'd like to hang around, we'll go ahead, pull into the garage and get started on it now. To begin our installation, we're going to be here at the front of our Focus. We have the fascia taken apart. That's because we're doing this at the same time that we're doing our base plate, which is what I suggest doing because you have a lot more room to work, but can be done with it all together. Just got to be a little bit trickier to see what you're doing. But with that said, we have our wiring here. We'll take one end of it. We need to hook up our connector plug. So I'm going to take the rubber boot, slide that right over the wires. Take one end of your wiring there and you can peel the ends back maybe a few inches, something like that. And then we're going to strip back the insulation on each wire just a little ways, maybe about a 1/4 inch or so. Give it a good twist. I'll do the same thing for our 3 remaining ends. To get our wires hooked up to the connector plug, they're going to be labeled. So TM is tail light, so the brown wire goes there. GD's ground, white wire will go into that. Then you have LT for left turn, so the yellow wire goes there. And then this one is RT for right turn, so the green wire gets plugged into that. So the way these work, take a Phillips screwdriver, back that set screw almost completely out. Try not to pull it all the way though, because sometimes they're hard to find if you drop them. You'll just take your wiring, push it down into the terminal, and tighten up the set screw. I'll do the same thing for our remaining wires. Here's how the connector plug is going to look once we have it hooked up. Something I want to mention, if you're going to be installing a charge line, a battery charge line, now would be a great time to do it since that component will have to get hooked to the back of the connector plug anyway. So we'll only have to get in here once. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll get that wire hooked up and then we can continue on with our diodes. Take your red wire, take one end of it, run it through the rubber boot there. And then we're going to strip the end of the insulation back just a little bit. Maybe about a 1/4 inch or so. Like that. That wire, good twist. And then on the back of our 6-way, we have a terminal there in the middle. That's the one that we're going to be using. So you can back out that screw with a small Phillips head screwdriver. And you're going to place that into the terminal and tighten that screw back down. So I got our charge line hooked up there. We're just going to put our boot back over this. What I do suggest doing is taking some silicone and filling this up real good to help prevent corrosion, but I wait till the very end to do that. That way we know everything's working, because if we got to get back in here, it could be, you know, it's a big mess. So just do this temporarily, and again, I'll just kind of temporarily just partly secure our connector. That way when we verify it does work, I can just pop it off and fill it full of silicone. But the wiring, I have it loosely routed. So eventually I'll come back and secure this up nice and, you know, nice and clean. But this is gonna go up into the engine compartment. So comes up through here, runs right up here into this area. For our charge line, it'll kind of come up through here, right in this area. That wire, like I said, I got it running up through here, then over by our positive battery terminal, and I mounted up our circuit breaker here. So this, you want to get it close to the battery. In our case, I just secured it to our battery box, and you could use the self-tappers, I suppose, but I didn't want anything pointy inside there, so I just drilled a couple holes and used a nut and a bolt to secure this. And then I cut our wire to length here. That way we can hook it to the breaker. So I cut it, stripped it back. You're gonna take one of these small ring terminals and crimp that on. And then that is going to go to the gold colored post. So it just slides over. Take the nut, tighten that down. So that's going to use a 3/8 size socket. And with these, you just need to snug them up. You know, you don't need to get crazy cranking down on them. And then what you can do, so you had some leftover wire from cutting that, you can build the other end here. And so in our case, it's maybe 6/8 inch piece of wire. Strip the ends back, one end, put on a small ring terminal. The other end you put on the larger terminal. And it's pretty straightforward from here. Go back to the breaker. This is silver colored post. That end, small end's gonna go on that end. That's snug. Once you got that tight, the other end can go to your positive battery post. Your end might look a little different. This is just what we're doing because we are adding a battery disconnect. So this is a style of terminal, but regardless, you hook it to the positive post. And get this tightened down. Like we talked about, our diode wiring ran up, and right here in this area, I'm going to ground our white wire. And so you can take a pair of snips and just very carefully cut the white wire in half. All right, then you can peel it back from the rest of the bundle. And the end that you want to work with is the end that's going to run down to our 6-way. So kind of clean up that end there. What you'll do, strip that back. Give it a twist, and you can crimp on a ring terminal. Here's our ring terminal, and regardless if we're using a ring terminal or a butt connector or a spade terminal, what we'll be doing a little bit later on, these are all going to work the same. Put it over the bare end of the wire, and crimp it down, and we're going to connect that to our frame here using a self-tapping screw. As far as the rest of the wiring is concerned, take the remaining portion of the white wire and just completely strip it off of the rest of our harness. You want to hold on to it because we more than likely we'll use it a little bit later on. So I continue to route our wiring, just ran it up through here, and And when you're doing this, you know, any routing, do your best to avoid any hotter moving parts. But I just got wiring through there where it drops down underneath of our vehicle. Underneath of our vehicle now, we continue to route that wiring. And so kind of just drops out through this opening there. And essentially I just ran it straight back following some factory lines. You know, use some zip ties every now and again to make sure it's secure. But pretty straightforward on this vehicle. Just follow those lines. And so I got it coming through here. And then kind of goes up and over our subframe. A little tricky to see, but running on top. And have it coming out there. Got it running over. And then at this point, what you can do is separate 3 wires. So you had your yellow, your green, and your brown. The green and the brown, you can, those are gonna run up into the passenger side taillight pocket, as well as, if you remember that piece of white wire that we held on to, I taped that to it as well. And so you're gonna have your green, your brown, your white running up into the passenger taillight pocket, which we'll do in a minute. The yellow wire and the other end of our white wire, that's gonna run on top of our bumper beam there, all the way over to our driver's side where we have it bundled up here. But with that said, now we can go up top, get our taillights out, and get our wiring pulled into position. So up top here, we can get our taillights removed. On the inside, kind of up towards the top, there's an opening, and then there's a little felt door that you can pop free. Inside of there, there's gonna be some plastic retainers or fasteners that you can unscrew to get the light out. So for the bottom one, you can pop this little felt door out of the way. And inside of there, there's the plastic retainer. Sometimes if they're really tight, you can grab a pair of pliers and break them loose. We'll see ours actually broke loose. So all you do with these is just unscrew them. So they look like. The other one is just up top here in this pocket. And we'll do the same thing. With them free, now you can grab your tail light, pop it out, and before I actually disconnect it here, I think it's a good idea to test the wires, which it should be these two, but we'll test them to identify our brake light signal and our tail light signal. I checked our wiring, and we're going to be dealing with these 2 wires here. The purple wire will be our tail light signal, and the yellow wire, we're going to use that for our stop and turn. So now that we identified that, we'll just disconnect our light, give us more space, push down on that tab to get it removed. And once you have it removed, we'll set it to the side. Do the same thing to get the driver's side one out as well. You can get our new wiring pulled into position. So I just used a pull wire. This is a piece of tubing that I dropped down through the tail light and taped our wiring to it. You can also straighten out a metal coat hanger, something like that. Do the same thing, but we'll pull these right up top here. What you can do, grab your tail light now, and we're gonna cut that purple and yellow wire. And on each one of the ends, you can strip back that insulation. Twist it. And you're going to crimp on one of these blue spade terminals here. So we'll just work through one at a time until the 3 remaining ends are set up. With our spade terminals on, you can take the diodes now, and one end of the diode is only going to have a single terminal labeled out. You're going to plug that onto the wires here closest to your bulb. So just pop that on. And you'll just go color for color, you know, so yellow one, plug that to the other side. Same deal with the purple wire. For new wiring, I cut the length because you don't need 3 extra foot. The green one, I crimped on a blue terminal. For the white and the brown, you're going to do something a little different. You're going to strip them back and then twist them together nice and tight. And with that, you can take the larger yellow terminal, put it over both ends, and crimp it down. And now what we can do, come back to our tail light here, and with the, I'll get this sorted correctly, with the factory purple wire being our tail light signal, I'm going to plug in the new white and brown wire to it, with the yellow wire being for a stop and turn. I will plug the new green wire into that one, and then we can actually secure the diodes, and it turns out there's a good flat spot there. I wipe that down with some rubbing alcohol, and you can take off the sticky tape and just stick them right to the tail light housing like that. And now we can take our factory connector, plug that back on in, and reinstall the light the opposite way that we removed it. Moving over here to the driver's side, I essentially set this up the exact same way. The wire colors, the factory wire colors are gonna be the same. So purple is your tail light signal, yellow is your stop and turn. With this one, the new white wire being our tail light signal, that gets connected to the purple diode. And since our new yellow is our stop and turn, that gets connected to the factory yellow there. So those all set up, get our light reinstalled again. It is a good idea to test the wiring now to make sure it's working properly. I'm using a test box to do this. You can use your RV, but keep in mind if your motorhome has any issues, might mislead you into thinking it's something you did on the vehicle side. But that said, we'll run through all of our signals. We'll turn on our taillights. We'll try our left turn signal, our right turn signal, and our brake lights. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster Diode Wiring Kit on our 2017 Ford Focus.